Bottego has announced that he is working on Sega's OutRun, an awesome retro racing game that still holds up today. He first gave us a hint by talking about a tool that allows you to create OutRun tracks and that we should be able to use real soon. An excited Twitter user then directly asks if it's being worked on. Bottego responds with screenshots of some of the source code files. So yes, looks like OutRun is coming soon to MiSTer. Later in the week, it is shown that the OutRun memory test is good and we might get the game working by next Friday. OutRun runs on Sega's series of superscalar hardware. This hardware gave games the ability to run pseudo 3D effects at high frame rates. These games usually also had specialized arcade cabinets like aircraft cockpits, car dashboards, a motorcycle you can control, and more. Sega went all out with these games and I'm looking forward for them to come to MiSTer. Jason Hicks has completed his MiSTer FPGA case made for the JAMMIX I/O board. The JAMMIX is an I/O board solution that can be used in an arcade cabinet using the JAMMIX standard. Or you can obtain a mini ITX case for it and consoleize your MiSTer for the living room. This case will help complement the JAMMIX board and will provide MiSTer specific buttons that you won't find in other mini ITX cases. You can order it now and it will cost $180. You get the option to choose your color. The MiSTer specific buttons are already built into the case, so you don't have to modify an existing case to get those buttons. It's an all-steel case and designed for maximum airflow. There's 4 front panel USB ports, so it's easier to connect controllers for 4-player gaming. If you want more information on the case, check out the product page for the case. James McKenzie on Twitter has compared the Ridge Racer Attract screen in MiSTer versus a real PlayStation. After letting the two run together for 5,765 frames, both systems remain in sync. There were previous tests that showed the PSX Core running slightly faster than a real PlayStation. Now, this shows that all the extra work Robert Pipe is doing is paying dividends. He's created tests that can compare results in MiSTer to that of a real PlayStation, and he's constantly fixing bugs. I never thought we'd get a good PlayStation Core this quickly when the Core was first announced. The PlayStation Core keeps getting constant bug fixes. I'm surprised it's being worked on this often considering not so long ago the developer injured his hand. This past week, there's been some rendering bug fixes. One stops text boxes in Final Fantasy VI from being cut off. Another fixes line glitches in Ape Escape cutscenes. The GUN4IR is now officially supported in MiSTer thanks to JB. Just run the update script and you will have support for it. If you don't know what the GUN4IR is, it's a modern light gun system that lets you play on any screen. It works by using IR receivers on the display to track the position of the light gun, similar to how a remote works, but much more accurate. The developers of the light gun claim aim on sight precision. If you have this light gun, please let me know your experience with it. Venice1200 on GitHub has a MiSTer TTY to OLED project that allows you to add a display to your MiSTer FPGA and show information or images regarding the currently running core. As far as I know, the project only uses a black and white display. But now, Neil Morrison 44 on GitHub has published his own version of the project that uses a color LCD display. It runs exactly the same as TTY to OLED, except you supply a folder full of PNGs. It's made for the Pi Pico and a round LCD he showed in a Reddit post, but it is mentioned that with minimal tweaking, it should work with any board and LCD screen combination. For detailed information on the project, head over to Neil Morrison's GitHub. And for the regular TTY to OLED project, there are some vendors like Antonio Villena who sell a pre-built screen that's ready to be used. I myself have a MiSTer setup that uses TTY to OLED in its built-in OLED screen. Todd Gill of Retrofrog is going to offer a MiSTer case he was building to the public. At first, he had no idea what he wanted to do with it, but the teaser he showed was pretty popular, so he decided to offer it to the public. He's first going to redesign it to make it easier and faster to print. The case has a housing for an MT32 Pi and a really cool housing to easily insert a SATA hard drive. That's not the only MiSTer case he was working on. He also released to Patreon subscribers a compact MiSTer case he was working on. So if you're interested in printing your own, check out the Patreon. A new game is coming to the Cave Core, but for the developer to get it working, there were some major modifications that needed to be made to the core. The hardware that the Cave games run on is pretty advanced, and Null Object, the developer of the Cave core, has run out of resources to further develop the core. However, there are options to free up resources. Null Objects has decided to move frame buffers to the D10 Nano's DDR memory. This gives an added benefit for the core to support games that require different resolutions. On Twitter, Null Object shows off Hot Dog Storm running at a resolution of 384 by 240. There is no sound yet in that game. Furtek has given some updates on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles core. There were some difficulties understanding how some things should work to help with debugging, so Furtek had to manually go through die traces to see if any mistakes were made. To further help with the core development, Furtek created a Python script that takes a main VRAM dump plus a screenshot, and converts that to a sprite info overlay. Let's appreciate the valuable resources that software emulators offer. I still use software emulators and they provide many different ways to play our favorite retro games. Later on, some progress on the core was made. The sprite line comparison logic now sometimes works, but as you can see from the screenshot, more work needs to be done. If you want to help support the development of the core, you can join Furtek's Patreon. Variable refresh rate support is now official. Zach enabled the ability for MiSTer to send FreeSync/VRR enabled frames if your display supports it. If you have a television that supports VRR, then MiSTer will be able to automatically set your TV to the weird refresh rates that arcade, consoles, and computers support. This is much easier than configuring INI files to get those refresh rates working. Paul BLNL has officially released the Super Game Boy core, and you can obtain it the next time you update your MiSTer. The current Super NES core was used to help develop it. The Super Game Boy core features MSU1 support, a cheat engine, and the ability to save and load backup Game Boy RAM. There is also a new core for the Tomy Tutor. This is a home computer that was first released in Japan in 1982 as the Puta, and it targeted children. Tomy stated that its documentation would let an 8-year-old child use the computer without adult supervision. And other miscellaneous MiSTer fixes and updates are: for the main MiSTer software, support for HDMI pixel repetition was added and some video tweaks were done by Martin Donlin. An input vibration test can be accessed by holding down the L button, then press X/Y in the menu core. Tweaks to the cheat menu were done by Arit. There's video support for a fractional frame rate in short version of the video_variable in the INI file. If a battery is available, there is now alternating info between battery and resolution. For the Super NES core, MSU1 data buffer was adjusted for a bigger video buffer. This fixes 512 pixel video modes with HQ2X enabled. For NES core, there were PPU fixes by Kitrinks. Kitrinks also added snack support for 3D glasses. Paul BNL made Famicom disk systems and MMC5 mapper fixes, and the framework was updated. For the Amiga core, support for analog joysticks was added, and the framework was also updated. For the SNK ZZ80 core, a ghost sprite glitch was permanently fixed in Alpha Mission. This was caused because of the development process for Ikari Warriors. Please try to support Sorg, the maintainer of the MiSTer project, and other MiSTer developers and contributors on Patreons or whatever other support platforms they have. Their hard work allows us to enjoy this amazing project. So that's it for this episode. I provided links to all my sources in the description. Make sure you also check out RetroRGB.com to see my MiSTer news videos in blog form and to get more retro related content. And if possible, support them on Patreon too. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like. And if you want to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button and its bell icon so you can get notified of future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you next time.